Welcome to We Hear Her. I am Erin Trenbeth Murray.
And I am Jennifer Bean.
We're here today with another amazing woman who's sharing her story and insights to lessons learned. Hi, I'm Erin Trenbeth Murray, and I'm here with my good friend Laura Peifer today. And I want to tell you a little bit about her. First of all, she's a fabulous golfer, which I love playing with her and doing fun events. But she has nearly 30 years of experience in healthcare industries, including joined the GBS benefits team as an employee benefits broker in 2011. She was formerly with Wise Provider Network, WPN, as a principal consultant, and she handled the negotiations, contracting, and management of custom healthcare networks. In her specialized role, she worked with many high-profile and Fortune 500 companies. And at GBS, Laura works with small employers as well as large corporate clients headquartered throughout Utah, Wyoming, and Colorado. Laura has been a repeat recipient of the prestigious Chairman's Circle Award, recognizing the top 10 insurance brokers within the nationwide Levitt Group organization. And within the community, Laura serves with the Boys and Girls Clubs of Salt Lake and founded the Kids Eat program at the club, providing meals to children and family at home and after school. Laura earned her bachelor's degree from the University of Utah and is licensed in health, life, and disability insurance. Plus, Laura, thank you so much for being here. As I mentioned, she loves music and the arts and friends and U of U sports, ULUM, and so I'm so glad you're here today.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Well, besides the background that I just gave a little bit of your professional bio, tell us a little bit more about kind of where you grew up and a little bit more about yourself.
Sure. So I actually was born and raised in Utah. I went to school and grew up in Murray.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a
Spartans.
Spartan.
Yep.
I'm a Murray Spartan. And from there, I have two sisters. I have an older and a younger, so I'm the middle child who was always the one in between the two sisters that I had. So went to Murray, and then from there went on to the University of Utah and got my Bachelor's of Science degree at the U.
Good.
Yeah.
So when you look, what was your bachelor's in at the U?
A Bachelor's of Science in Sociology,
Uh-huh.
and then I also, for a while there, I thought I was going to be Nancy Drew and go into the FBI. Believe it or not, I was going down that path, and was at the time there wasn't a degree in criminology, so you got a certificate. So I did all of the forensics and the forensic classes and through the sociology department, and then also got a minor in psychology. So my major is in sociology, a minor in psychology, and the certificate in criminology.
Oh, wow.
So I totally thought I was going to be FBI Nancy Drew, but that came to an end when there was a hiring freeze
At the FBI.
At the FBI. There was a hiring freeze for 5 years.
Oh my goodness.
And at that point, it was, what's my backup plan? So at that time, interestingly, I went down to the Department of Human Services and applied for a job as a social worker to go out and work with families and do family checks. And I applied for that job, and it was to make $7.40 an hour.
Wow.
And I thought, I've got a degree. I mean, I'm going to get this job. You know, I think I'm going to get this job. And I didn't even get a call back. Apparently, there were over 50 people who had applied for that job, and I did not even get a call back.
Wow.
So at that point, it was, what am I going to do?
Right.
So at that time, I had actually, at 18 years old, I started working at FHP, which was the Family Health Plan.
Yeah, I remember.
And I was there and worked there part-time through college. So
Wasn't
I
their
always had a
headquarters
degree.
right off of I-80?
It's actually right off of 3rd South, right down from the Garf building. So it was 35 South Main, 35 South Broadway.
Okay.
Anyways, I was working there part-time as I was going to the U, supporting myself as I paid for my own housing, I paid for my own schooling, and at that point said, what am I going to do? And then I turned from not wanting, well, I couldn't go through the FBI, I couldn't go that path. So it was, what am I going to do next? Well, I'm already working for this organization. I think I'm pretty good at it. And then from there, went into sales and marketing, and that's how my career started with healthcare.
Wow. Well, I have to tell you, there is another lady, and I am drawing a blank at the moment. I'm going to need to go back, of our 130 women who are members of Women Who Succeed, and one of them was in the FBI.
Ah,
Similarly, went through school. So I'm going to have to figure out who that was, and I'll have to introduce you. The two of you
yeah,
can talk.
yeah.
So that's neat.
It's
Well, when you
fun.
look back, tell me about your decision then to get. And my background is in the soft sciences too.
Hmm.
It's family and consumer studies. And I think that I've served on a couple boards up there, and you didn't necessarily want to be a social worker or go into that. Would you have done anything different with your education um, when you look back? Was there a different path you may have wished that you had taken?
That's a good question. At the time, I thought I wanted to go back and do a master's in social work.
Uh-huh.
However, I recognized that the burnout rate is so high,
Yeah.
and I have so much empathy for others that I realized that that probably was going to be hard on me personally,
Mm-hmm.
and it would be taking on a lot of other people's problems and issues. Although I am very kind, I think I'm kind, I'm pretty kind
You are.
and
You
giving and
are.
caring, but I also recognize that I had to draw a boundary around myself,
Yeah.
that I could not take on that much stress of others. So as much as I like to help, and I do through other things as I've grown, that is something at that point I thought, you know what, I don't know that I want to continue down getting my master's in that program.
Well, you're in Women Who Succeed.
Hmm.
You've involved with the Boys and Girls Club. Tell me a
Correct.
little bit about the program, the um,
Kids
the
Eat.
Kids Eat program. Yeah,
Sure.
how
So
that was
Kids
came
Eat
to
is
be.
actually an amazing organization. It was actually founded really by my mother and my sisters and I.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So it started out that I worked as with the Boys and Girls Club because that was one of my clients, the Boys and Girls Club of Murray, and then also it moved into the Salt Lake chapter or organization there. But what happened is there were kids in the club, and they were stealing food from the pantry
Mm-hmm.
because they were hungry, and it was really my mother saying, "What is happening here?" So we started gathering donations and taking food over to the club and saying, you know what, let's send these kids home with food. Well, that morphed into what happens to the children on the weekends when they go home
Mm-hmm.
and they don't have the club to support them. So that became really the Kids Eat organization, or sorry, gathering food and providing backpacks for kids. And it morphed into a really large organization. And in the past 2 years, USANA came in and took over the
Mm.
program. They were looking for a an organization that they could actually embrace
Mm-hmm.
and take over, which they did. And now the program it exists with USANA. They have their
Yeah.
own building, and they are feeding thousands of kids every single month through and it's fun because I haven't followed it as much as I used
Mm-hmm.
to because
Mm-hmm.
they took over the program. Um, but I watch them through Facebook, and
Yeah.
there's always organizations of scouts and churches and companies that are going out and doing some volunteer work with them because they need help filling those backpacks for kids.
I love that. You know, my
Yeah.
background is serving people in poverty, and so that really warms my heart. I love it when community members step up
Yeah.
and see a need and then try to fill the gap, and that seems like something you would totally do.
Yeah.
You know, I met, I'm drawing a blank on the lady's name at this moment. She was in the Women's Leadership Institute certificate class at the University of Utah with me this year. And now it's all coming together. She was running the Kids Eat program through USANA, so
Okay.
full circle. But it
Yeah.
all started because you and your sister and your mom stepped up
Right.
and saw that.
Yeah. It just started with recognizing that kids were stealing food because they were hungry, and that just breaks your heart.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Tell me a little bit about, I mean, you've got this neat balance. When I look at you, I see this super intelligent, bright woman who you have figured out this balance of um, play, and I know you work really hard because you gave up a golf game the other day because you were working and you worked till about 11 o'clock that night in the office. You make time for your friends. Whenever you see me, the first thing you say to me is, "How are you, my friend?" And you look me in the eye and you like genuinely mean it. Like it's not just a casual statement. I can tell you like you're really interested in me as a human being. And I want you to know how much I have appreciated that. But all of those things you do come with a certain level of beautiful confidence. And I'm wondering where you feel that came from. Where did you learn or see, or what inspires you? How do you become this confident woman?
Well, I thank you.
Well, it's
Thank you.
true.
It's interesting because I think it's difficult oftentimes to talk about yourself
Yeah.
for everyone. I don't know why that is, and that I think as we talked about looking through some questions and thinking about what we could talk about today, it is interesting to see how it is difficult for women to talk about themselves and talk about your successes and things. It's a lot easier when somebody else can point them out or read them about you or like you just did and just say, how I am perceived when we get together and we talk. So thank you.
You're welcome. Well, it's
that
the
is
little
helpful.
things that you do that I notice, or and I think that's important when we compliment other women that we're specific and we help reflect, because I'm with you. I don't think that we often as women either give ourselves enough credit in that regard, or I don't know. To your point, I think it's hard to recognize our strengths.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think that the confidence that I have is started with my mom, and I talked about that before. Is my mother raising 3 girls and always instilling in us that you do not need a man to make you successful. You've got to get out there in the world and you've got to do things on your own. Depend on yourself. You can obviously be married, you can have children, you can have relationships, but really try not to depend on your success and happiness. You've got to build that yourself. So there's confidence that I learned as a young girl, but also confidence that the business that I work in now is really based around a man's world. If you look throughout Utah and throughout the nation, the job that I do is really, I would say, 85% men. And so you have to have confidence when you're going in and working with companies, working with C-suite people that are oftentimes male.
Right.
And having confidence that I've got to have that confidence in myself that then can be portrayed to them, that I am going to do a great job for you. And so I'm knowledgeable, I'm successful, I'm going to do a great job. So that's important when I have to carry that confidence. Otherwise, going back to what my mom taught me as a kid, is I'm not going to be successful, and I'm going to end up being dependent on somebody else. And those are the things that I'm not gonna fail there.
Yeah.
I've got to make sure that
Failure's not an
failure's
option.
not an option. And there are days that you fail. There are things that there's times that I don't win business or I lose business, and you take it personal for a minute. And I've talked about this before. If I'm going to lose, it's going to be a few minutes that I take time to reflect and then come back with confidence and say, all right, well, you know what? You don't win them all. But it doesn't mean we're going to give up. We're going to keep going.
I remember when we've had that conversation before, and you've talked a little bit about, I'm not using your words, but a little bit of a pity party. You allow yourself to have these
wounded bird.
Little wounded bird, that's what it
Yes.
was. Do you use any of the same, do you have any self-talk? Anything that you use over and over again to be like, all right, here we are. Here's what we're going to do. Like, how do you pull yourself back up?
I take a minute to go, okay, this hurt, and
This hurt.
This hurt. I'm a wounded bird. I'm going to sit here for a minute and reflect on, what went wrong, what could I have done differently? And oftentimes you have to recognize, I think as women, we tend to blame ourselves. Like, oh my gosh, I didn't do that correctly. I did that wrong. what happened? They didn't like me.
They didn't like me.
They didn't like me. Maybe they didn't want to work with a woman. Maybe I'm of the wrong religion. Maybe it's that they don't want to work with women. You go down that path of your mind going all these different directions and these questions of doubt. But you have to bring yourself back together and say, it's okay. Everyone can't like everyone. Or maybe there was a different solution for them. Maybe they weren't the ones making the decision. Maybe it just wasn't a good fit. And you have to move on with that and say, that's okay. Recently, it's funny, I worked with an organization and we got fired. Out of nowhere, we got fired. And the story that we received back from them it didn't make much sense, but you have to live with it. It was, not to go down that rabbit hole, but it didn't make sense to us. And we just had to walk away and say, it wasn't us. It wasn't me. It wasn't me. It wasn't the job that we had done, because we knew we had done a good job. And sure enough, 2 years later, now finding out that this individual, there were other things going on with them. They, in the organization, and it really had nothing to do with us. Right. It was just a change in leadership at the company. Oftentimes when we go in to try to do business, we'll first say, okay, who are you working with today? Are you working with, is your broker, because I'm an insurance broker, is it your brother-in-law? Is it your neighbor? Is it your bishop? Who is it that you currently work with? Because if there's a family relationship there, we're going to respect that. We're going to have a great conversation right now, but no pressure, and it's okay. So oftentimes you get in with people and you're having a conversation and you think you're going somewhere, but that door might never even really open for you. But
I think I liked it when you were talking about that you kind of spoke to quieting that negative talk in your head, that negative self-talk, and I could almost hear your thoughts in your head, because so many of them sounded similar to thoughts that I've had, like I've upset them, they don't like me, what did I do wrong? And internalizing that, and the strength that you described of quieting that talk, so that it really is, okay, you know what, these are the facts, we're going to step back from this, we're going to be unbiased about it, and it may or may not be us, but we're going to recognize that and we're going to move on. I loved that.
Yeah, you have to. Otherwise, you're going to fail. Otherwise, you're going to end up really not progressing in your career, progressing in, the goals that you have. Because if you let those get you down and keep you down, you're never gonna survive. You're never gonna progress.
You're not gonna progress.
You're not gonna succeed.
Yeah. When you've led so many different groups of people, has there been an experience that's been especially challenging that stands out to you in your mind that you had to overcome as a leader, and how you were able to motivate yourself and your team to overcome that obstacle?
Yeah. So one thing, I have never liked to be, I like to be a leader, but I also don't want to be a manager. And I don't want to have an uncomfortable conversation with people. And so when I have been, when I've been in that position, which I have several times in my career, I've sat down with my team and I've said, we all know our jobs. Do you know your job? Do you need help with your job? Do you have any question about what your job is? Because let me tell you something about me. You've got this job because you've been chosen. You are going to do a great job. I'm here to help you do a good job. Please don't make it uncomfortable for me to have a conversation with you, because I'm not good at it. This is not one of my strengths. So I've really tried to express that I will help you, I will support you, but I don't want to have an uncomfortable conversation with you when things aren't going well for you. So let's be a great team. Let's have fun. Let's make money. Let's do a great job. But I've really tried to turn it around to help them understand that this is a weakness for me, and that I don't want to have an uncomfortable conversation. And so I did that throughout my career. to say, and I've had to have those uncomfortable
Of
conversations.
course you have. Of course you
And
have.
I've had to sit down and say, okay, this is one of those uncomfortable conversations that I really don't want to have, but we need to talk about it.
Yeah.
And I've had to do that.
Yeah, it's different to not put your head in the sand.
Right.
But I like kind of the acknowledgement of this is something that I prefer not to do.
Right.
But here we are.
Exactly.
But here we are.
Yeah, here we are, unfortunately. And how are we going to move forward? You know.
When you were talking earlier about the amount of females that are in your role is very small for the specialized work that you do.
Yes.
It made me kind of think again about the purpose of Women Who Succeed, which is to grow confidence and leadership skills in girls and young women, growing them, so supporting them so they can have a little bit of more of an edge than we did when we kind of grew into that stage of our lives. Do you think girls and young women have it harder than we did, or do you think is it easier? What are your thoughts as to where girls and young women are compared to when we were that age, teenagers going into college?
I think it is harder for girls these days. You know, if I looked back at myself, I would think, oh, it's so hard.
Oh, that was so
hard. But really, it's almost the distractions and the chaos today that these kids have. I have a 16-year-old daughter, and even last night, she came in my room, and we were sitting there, and I was trying to have a conversation with her, and she had her phone. She's trying to have a conversation with me, but at the same time, she's watching her TikToks and her Snapchats and everything, and I just said, you got to put that down. There's so much chaos going on right now. I can see it. You're not paying attention. So I think it's harder today because I think there's so much outside noise and outside distractions for these kids that through social media, through the apps, the phones, all of these different platforms that kids are on these days, that there's a lot of noise. They are not as focused. My daughter, I have to keep her focused. Say, stay in your lane. Let's get back on path. Like we sit down and have that conversation about why being in high school is important to have good grades because it's going to be the next stepping stone for you to get into the university. And really, I mean, all universities are wonderful. They're there for a purpose and they serve those people that are going to go there. But I also point out your opportunities. If you do well now, you're going to have more opportunity as you get to college to have a choice of ones to go to. You've got to do well on your ACTs. You've got to prepare. You've got to, have choices. Suddenly you're going to have applications coming from organizations. You want to be able to have a choice and not only come down to one and that's the only one you get. Don't you want to have more to choose from? So starting early and saying it's important to do what you're doing today, put down the phone, put down the distractions that, you have, because I take her phone now. As of last week, I said, I'm taking your phone every night at 10 o'clock because
good parenting.
It's hard.
It
is hard. I'm the bad guy.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
hard.
Mom,
you don't understand. I have to do streaks.
Yeah.
These streaks that these kids are doing. I got to do a streak. Back then, streaking was when you were naked running down the street, right? Well, now it's streaking is, this phone thing that the kids are doing. Anyways, but it's really, I think it is harder for kids these days because there's too many distractions.
Well, and I was going to ask you about what weapons you use to combat social media with your daughter, and you've just described a couple, calling her attention to your face while you're speaking and engaging. You've talked about restrictions of the phone at night. Do you have any advice that a young woman could use herself to build a little bit of a thick armor around herself? We all know that social media can crush spirits with mean comments and bullying. And are there any thoughts that you could give to young women of how they can arm themselves a little bit, that I think honestly having that thicker skin, learning it early, carries into adulthood, as when we're in a boardroom and having a thick skin. Are there any lessons that can transfer to both?
I think there is. the concern I have is like you mentioned, Erin, there's so much damage with the social media and these kids. I watch, when we were kids, let me go back. When we were kids, you had a phone that was stuck to the wall.
Yep.
The phone would ring, your friends would say, let's meet up at 6 o'clock, at Italian Village in Murray. That's where we're going. And that's what you knew the plan. Well, nowadays, and if you were not invited or you missed it, you didn't know.
Not usually.
You didn't know, and your feelings didn't get hurt.
Yeah.
And you didn't start to have the self-doubt that we talk about. Well, why didn't they invite me? And that, I was left out. And
Fear of missing out.
the fear of missing out, the
Yep.
FOMO. So it's really hard. And that's why there's a balance. And I don't know that I'm a great parent in doing it, because sometimes I'm a total pushover, and
Aren't
give
we
the
all?
phone back,
Aren't
and
we all?
going out with their friends, and doing that social that is so important to kids. But it is back to that balance with them. And what advice I could give, it's hard. If I could take that phone, or I could eliminate half of that social media, because I think it's teaching young girls that image, the number of selfies that we have to take on a daily basis drives me nuts. It's like, what are you going to do with all your pictures that we just took
Of ourselves.
of ourselves? I mean, like, why do I have to buy more iCloud storage? Because all it is pictures of you and videos of you, which you're beautiful, obviously instilling that confidence in them as a parent, but also balancing that to say, we're not going to become, as much as I want to give you confidence, we have to be realistic about where it's going. And trying to, I don't know if saying limit is the right word, but just recognizing that this might be important for you right now, but this is going to change. And I try to talk about phases of life with my daughter, to say, right now, this is a phase, and it hurts so bad that you didn't get invited, but guess what? Time's going to heal this, and we're going to move on. That's my big advice that I give her is, right now it hurts because we weren't invited to that, or we missed out on that party, or we didn't get invited to the prom. But guess what? In 2 weeks, when I come back to you and I say, are you okay today? You're going to say, oh, I'm fine, because I moved on. So these are steps, and these are experiences, but it's not going to define your future. That's what she needs to understand. So it's just step after step, but making sure she stays on the right path and in the right lane.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it kind of goes back to even like when you pulled yourself out of when you lose a client, teaching yourself to not listen to that negative self-talk, to that little whispering voice in your head. And so I think that is one good piece of armor that young women can have, that, yes, acknowledge it hurts that I wasn't invited, or they're talking about me. Okay, I'm going to be wounded bird for a little bit.
Yeah.
And now I'm going to step back and put some objectivity to this, and talk myself back up to a positive place.
It's funny because I keep using it. I just realized just in this moment that I always use these examples of birds. Yes, you're a wounded bird, but another thing I say to my daughter is, you can let that bird fly through your brain for a minute, but you're not going to let it sit and nest. That negative little bird that flows through, you can fly through and you can think about it for a minute, but don't let it nest.
Oh, I love that.
Because it's just, it'll bring you down.
Yeah.
You can think about it for a few minutes, but no, we're going to move on. That bird's going to fly through and it's going to keep going.
I also like how you touched on balance, which, the balance with the phone, right? But that's a life lesson, I think, for women in general. We're always trying to balance our family. We're trying to balance our career. We're trying to balance our volunteer time, our friends. So it's a good overall lesson about maybe not being obsessed with one thing, which is, obsessed with the phone. That's not balance. And you're going to need to learn balance to thrive in this lifetime.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Sometimes it takes a while to figure out what someone's passion is. And I think we're always continuing to seek for what that is. What am I interested in? Oh, I'm good at this. What should I do? It's funny with my daughter. I keep going back to her.
Yeah.
When she was a little kid, she was so cute. When she'd watch the Olympics, it was the Summer Games. She wanted to be Gabby Douglas. We had to do gymnastics lessons. And that lasted for a while, and then it was the Winter Olympics. Well, then she needed to do ice skating, so we tried the ice skating, and then we tried soccer, and we tried dance, and we tried all of these different things, and until she finally found what she was passionate about. And right now, her passion is music, and she's a great singer. She plays guitar.
Right.
So it's not, for me, it wasn't, continuing making somebody do something that they either weren't good at or they weren't excited about. It was continuing to try to find what fits for you. And I think that's important for young women too. I was going down a path that I was interested in of FBI, Nancy Drew, I'm going to be great. And I love crime shows. Just so you know, I have to watch crime shows every weekend because I'm still totally interested in it. But that path didn't work out for me. So you have to be able to pivot. You have to be able to say, okay, if this isn't working, try what's next, and not force something necessarily. Because if it doesn't feel good and it's not right, you got to pivot and you got to try something else. And don't give up on one thing. Try the next.
I think that is something new compared to my generation. I mean, I was in the same company for 23 years, and
Right.
we made it. Just you got your degree. That meant that was the field you were going into. That meant that's what you were supposed to do, and then you stayed, right?
Right.
And I don't necessarily. I hear people say that it's kind of a negative of this generation now of the changing. I love it. I think good for them. Your life's going to change. You're going to have new interests. New people are going to come into your life. You're going to want to try. If you want to try a new job, try a new job. You want to live in a new country, go try living in a new country. I think
Right.
that freedom is super exciting. I really do, especially for young women. When I talk to my son's friends that are females, they're in college, and they just seem to be like ready to take it on. And I love that. I really, really love that.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think that continue to try. I mean, if it doesn't fit, it doesn't feel right, give it some time.
Yeah.
You've
yeah,
got to
give it
be
a
able
little bit of
to
stick. Yeah.
give a little bit of time to
Yeah.
see that, what do you like, what do you dislike, but also giving women the skills to evaluate that. Because what you don't want to do is jump for something maybe that you thought was better, and is that the grass is greener on the other side. So there's always that going on, but at least giving them life skills, education, the things that they need to make good choices.
There you go.
But don't fail. If it doesn't work out, don't feel like you failed.
Yeah.
Pivot, go to the next, and give it a try. What do you have to lose?
Right. That, to expand on that, I mean, in wrapping up, I just love to know if, speaking to the girls and the young women that will be listening to this podcast, as well as our peers that will also hear it, what kind of final thoughts? That was such a beautiful epiphany for me, what you just described. But are there other kind of lasting words of wisdom that you'd like to share?
Just continue down your path that or in your head, you've got a path. Everyone has something in their mind of what you want to be. When we were little, it was, what do you want to be when you grow up? You've been asked that since you were a little kid. What do you want to be when you grow up? And it's funny to hear what kids will tell you. It starts out as, I want to be a policeman, I want to be a nurse, I want to be a fireman, and you see that in kids. And then as we grow, you suddenly, that expands into other opportunities in your head. Like, I want to be a veterinarian. I want to be a marine biologist. I want to be, no one, just so you know, ever said, I want to grow up and be an insurance broker. No one ever said that, ever. In fact, I was never invited to career day because it was too complicated to explain to children what that means. But there's every job out there it's important and it's meaningful. And, I think some final words as continue to go down your path of education, and you will have opportunities. You want to continue to thrive and just don't have self-doubt. And if something doesn't work, you can have a pity party for a hot 5 minutes, but after that, you've got to pivot and continue down the path of, all right, what's going to make me happy and successful, and I'm going to succeed.
Laura, you're the coolest friend and mom ever. You're a cool mom, and Your kids are so
I don't
lucky
know.
to have you. They are.
It depends on what day.
What day,
whether
right.
if they have the phone in their hands or if they
Right.
don't, if I'm a cool mom.
Right. Well, with that, I just like to thank Laura for being here today and look forward to seeing you again soon.
Great. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure.
Thank you for taking time to hear her. Join our efforts and learn more at womenwhosucceed.org. A big thank you to our sponsor, the Clark and Christine Ivory Foundation.